Okay, boom, we're here. We are here. A little housekeeping. If you're just listening, hit subscribe, rate the podcast, share the podcast. If you're just listening and you want to watch the podcast, you can see all of the episodes on Big Moon TV. We have tons of other content there and other content coming up. So that's Big Moon TV, and share the podcast. We love doing it. We want to connect with you. So that's that. Shout out to Snoop Proof and all the Brown companies doing the damn thing. So today, let me preface this really quick. So just because I'm sober doesn't mean I'm anti-drug. I am definitely not anti-drug. For really, how I feel is that if you can do any, what we're talking about today is less drug, but if you can do any drug or drink and recreationally and enjoy yourself, like, right on, cool, enjoy that. But what we're going to speak today about is some plant medicine. And we have Jessica Rector here. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Hey, let's go. And we're going to talk about psilocybin and my experiences, her experiences, the experiences she's been able to share with people and be in that space with people. And I'll be able to, provide some insight. But we want to normalize this plant medicine. We want it to be known for what its true value is. And when we spoke previously, we kind of resonated on that together. So what's up, Jessica?
Hi. Glad to be
really
here.
quick.
Yeah.
She is a physical therapist and a spiritual life coach. That's
Yes.
what she does. That's what she does. But that's what we're talking about. There we go.
There we go. So I was trained in physical therapy. I'm actually a pelvic physical therapist. So I worked with a lot of people with bathroom and bedroom dysfunction is really how I categorize it. But there's so many people with chronic pain, and those are the people that traditional physical therapists don't love working with, because chronic pain is not a physical problem, which makes people feel uncomfortable, but it's not. A chronic pain is an emotional and a psychological problem. So you can't solve that just with normal exercise. You have to solve it with behavioral changes and self-love and spiritual growth and things like that. So I've been doing what I would call life coaching and spiritual coaching the whole time I've been a physical therapist. And now I'm kind of just throwing it up in the air and transitioning to that completely, because physical therapy keeps me too much in a box, I think.
So you transitioned from the physical therapy, doing manual therapy, into dealing with chronic pain through spiritual and life coaching.
Yeah, I'm not treating people exclusively with chronic pain, but that is really where I found I enjoy most of my time, because people with chronic pain just doctor shop basically on repeat because no one has answers for them.
Yeah.
Because it seems like a medical problem, but it's not. It's an emotional and a psychological problem. So those are the people that I really love working with, because I like being the person that creates a space where I can be okay, I might not take away your pain forever, but I can help you take away your suffering.
Ooh, that's so good.
And that's not really an answer that they've gotten from anywhere else before. So that is my preferred population, but I'll work with anyone who wants to change anything,
Yeah. So that's, I love people in the coaching space. I've been in the coaching space my entire sobriety. And there's so many different modalities of coaching. And I always say healing's for everybody. Healing isn't a luxury. And our generation is leading the way with hey, get better. I don't want to hear you talk about this is just the way I am. No, you can improve.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe, and I know people who are in chronic pain who just take 300 milligrams of oxy every day.
Yeah.
And they can't even perceive a life without it. They were like this girl was like so offended that I told her, I was like, you can not be on that. But anyway, that's the way we treat chronic pain.
And what kind of drug is that, right?
It's an opiate. It's
the
heroin.
difference, but exactly the difference between a drug and a medication is that a doctor is writing you a prescription for it and maybe teaching you a safe way to use it, but maybe not teaching you a safe way to use it.
Yeah. And you're probably, when you take that much oxy, you're probably not using it the prescribed way. But okay, so let's talk about what spiritual coaching means to you. And then we can get into the meat and potatoes.
The other stuff. So I feel like spiritual coaching to me is helping people discover their power. So it's why I don't call, like a lot of people call themselves healers or whatever. Like I don't call myself a healer. I am a space holder. So I hold space while you figure out that you can heal yourself. And then if you want me to keep working with you, I will. But really, once you discover your power, you need other people's healing, quote unquote, less and less, because you know that it's within you. So that's what spiritual coaching is to me, just kind of helping everyone realize that they are their own healer. And then healing has a ripple effect. So like if you take your space and your life gets better and the way that you view your life gets better, you're that person that smiles to someone on the street and their day is better. Or even closer to home, your family life is better, your close friend group, people, it has a ripple effect. So it just continues to spread out. And now you can teach other people that they can heal themselves.
Definitely. Yeah, I had that in my own life. I had, being in the recovery community, I had people really hold space for me to do my work and kind of encourage me to meditate. And once I started meditating regularly and growing and enriching my spiritual life, then I was like, oh, I have answers. I have answers to my problems. I have solution today. But someone had to hold space for me in order to get to that, to the place where I could start solving my own problems, or a higher power, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. I did a whole episode on that, the idea of just creating your own spiritual life, and that we're free to do that without being, you're a witch.
Yeah.
People aren't going to set you on fire for it,
right.
which is pretty tight.
It's nice.
It's pretty nice. So, okay, cool. So I'm going to really share my experience really quick.
Okay.
So growing up, I took mushrooms in a very recreational way. It was like fun. And I think a lot of people have done and I'm going to interchange the words as I tell this story. But I did mushrooms in a very recreational way. Like, hey, let's get together, let's go to the woods and do mushrooms, or like, let's make mushroom tea and hang out at the house, or even drive around, smoke blunts and do mushrooms, which you shouldn't drive. Actually, really quick, I did mushrooms and drove from Connecticut to upstate New York to go to court. Court, and went to court like, I went to court fully on mushrooms, full tripping, looking at the judge's face. That's the kind of life I was living. But then I did have the opportunity to do to partake in psilocybin ritually before I got sober, and have the entire space cultivated for a healing experience. Intentions set very very specifically. Meditation in silence. Had a very, very transcendent experience. And I think we talked about it previously, how we've kind of bastardized this medicine. But I want you to get into it and like break down your experience holding space with other people during it, and your own personal experience with psilocybin.
So same thing, like in the past, I've used them recreationally and like music festivals, whatever. And there's still things that are gained when you use them lacking planning or lacking intention. But the fear of medicines like this is that you're going to have a bad trip. And I am a big proponent that bad trips don't exist. They're not all pretty.
Yeah.
But bad trips are not really a thing as long as you don't have like a pre-existing severe psychological condition, because the medicine really is going to show you things that you've been avoiding. And if you take a look at it and you're like, oh my gosh, this monster, come here, give me a hug. Like, what do you have to tell me, instead of trying to run from it? Then the bad trip goes away and you have that learning experience. So recreationally, that's sort of the risk, is that people will have bad trips that mythologically they can't come back from or whatever. So I've certainly used them recreationally in the past with like friends and stuff. But a few years ago, I went to Peru for a retreat to do Wachuma or San Pedro, whatever you want to call it. And that was the first time I really experienced medicine in a sacred space. And it was really powerful. And there was a wonderful medicine man holding space for us. And so that just kind of made me come back and reflect on like you were saying, healing's for everyone, right? Not everyone can afford to go to Peru and do this medicine that they've never even heard of to know that they should be saving money for this trip, right?
Yeah.
Most people, if not everyone in the United States, have heard of psilocybin mushrooms, and like it makes it a little bit more accessible to use a medicine like that. So why can't we be creating sacred space with a medicine that grows in our own country and that people are more familiar with? So from a space holding or spiritual perspective, I do sort of like these in-home retreats with people where we try to do some type of psychedelic healing. I do breath work with people. So for anyone who does...
Which can be psychedelic.
Correct. So for anyone who doesn't want to do psilocybin, we can do breath work to sort of get you in a similar mindset, which is obviously maybe something that people are more comfortable with. I'm not like providing mushrooms or psilocybin to anyone, but people are doing them anyway. And so something that I feel really strongly about is if people are going to do this medicine on their own anyway, isn't it safer if I teach someone the importance of intention setting and creating a safe space for yourself and having a sitter so that if you do get into a headspace that you can't get out of whatever that negative thought loop is, I can be there supporting you to pull you out and ask you the right questions so that you can better process these emotions and optimize that experience and the healing that the medicine has to offer. So that's sort of like how the process works, right? Like I'm going to do a retreat for you and use something like breath work or sound healing, or because I'm a physical therapist, do body work or energy healing throughout the process. And if you have chosen to purchase this product by yourself and are going to be doing them there anyway, then me being there while you are doing them is just safer.
Yeah.
I'm obviously not doing them at the same time. Yeah. So that is like it's not like a group of friends just like all doing mushrooms together. I'm sober.
we were talking about this. The way now as an adult, the way we've treated them and the way people treat them bastardizes the real opportunity. The idea that like I'm gonna go in like my living room and do mushrooms and like watch Yellow Submarine.
It makes me kind of angry, honestly.
It really bothers me. And like I said, I'm for doing drugs. So like, if just because I can't do drugs doesn't mean everybody else can't. So like part of me is like, I want people to, if you want to do mushrooms, I think we should legalize them and like do mushrooms. Like cool, but also there's something so profound. It was one of the most profound experiences I've ever had in my entire life. And like I said, I'm a daily meditator and I seek a spiritual life. And you know what I call it? It's an acute spiritual experience. With meditation, it's passive. Meditation is drip drops of spirituality that you do every day. And like that is transcendent and it can be psychedelic because I have full visual experiences when I meditate. I'm very fortunate. Not everybody has that. Like some people are like, I hate it because it's not entertaining. But for me, it's super entertaining, So like, I think meditation is like a drip drop of that transcendent experience. But what psilocybin offers is an acute spiritual experience. You're thrusted into a different realm of perception where you're able to connect with yourself. And like echoing the sentiment of a bad trip, it's not a bad trip. It's a lesson that you're needing to learn. And holding space with people and someone holding space for me allowed me to go through the ebbs and flows of my experience and face the things that I needed to face. Like for me, in my experience, I realized and I talk about it on this podcast about meeting needs. I was in a situation where my needs were not met in life. And I was looking for the world to meet my needs. I was looking for heroin to meet my needs and money and all this stuff to meet my needs. This is my first time introduction to this now in retrospect. But then I had this experience where it was like only a spiritual life is going to meet my needs. Mm-hmm. And I was able to navigate that through this space that was held. So was it uncomfortable? Absolutely, it was uncomfortable to the point where I wanted to cry in this experience. But there was a lesson learned, and I was thrusted into that acute spiritual experience. Mm-hmm. What do you, after you've held space for people, what's the process, post experience?
So what it looks like is I meet with people leading up to it so that we can really sort of hone the intention. Because sometimes people are like, oh, I just want to do this thing because it sounds cool, right? And I'm like, well, we need a purpose. That's what makes you get what you ask for every time. That is the magic of this medicine. So let's hone what your intention. So we meet leading up. The night before, we do something to make sure people are in the right headspace, like a dinner or a walk on the beach or like whatever will make them feel grounded. And then the morning of, I tell them to do what will clear their head. So some people, I worked with a couple and they're like, we're going to go on an 8-mile run. And I was like, I'll see you later.
Have fun.
Or like I can lead us through a yoga practice or something, but just like a nice calming morning. Don't do work. Don't interact with people that are going to stress you out. Get in your space. And then the day of, obviously, is like the healing experience. And then the morning after, there's like an integration circle. So we either like have coffee or breakfast or something together and talk about what you were experiencing the day before when you were in that psychedelic space via breathwork or whatever medicine you've chosen. So that I can start asking you the right questions. Because sometimes when you come out of a space like that, you're just like very overwhelmed by the experience, either for better or for worse. And so I start asking questions of how to that will make you process those emotions or those thoughts better. And then everyone has to journal. Like if you don't own a journal, you purchased one before we worked together, you journal now. Yeah. That's just the way that it is. Yes, that's just part of your life now. And then I check in with people, like a week later, see how they're doing. It's definitely client dependent. If I'm already working with someone, coaching them on a weekly basis, and we just sort of continue. I've held space for people and they had no interest in any type of therapy or coaching or personal growth. It was someone else who recommended it to them. Yeah. And then all of a sudden after this experience, they're like, oh,
I need to work with you.
I should do this. Yeah. So it's definitely person dependent, but it's not just like, oh, I hold space for you one day and like, see ya, contact me if you want.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Anybody who asks me to, if they want to have an experience now, I mentioned the acute spiritual experience, but then there's work after. Mm-hmm. There's work after. There's lessons that you were taught, and that you receive, and then in order to maintain that shift and that breakthrough that you may or may not have gone through, but that a lot of times that you've gone through, there's action steps after that.
Totally.
And I think that's what sets apart just doing any plant medicine. Ritualistically or recreationally, it's like there's work to be done after to continue to maintain your spiritual condition.
Totally. And
I kind of want to do mushrooms as a sober person, to be honest with you. Well, and I'll say that on here. Like I want to do psychedelics sober, but I'm scared.
When the time's right? Like you'll know.
And especially people will judge me. That's like all. I talk so much about recovery on this podcast and in my life that like if I did DMT, which to me is perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. To me is like I can be like, yeah, I'm going to do this spiritual experience because I do spiritual work and I like work really hard at it. Mm-hmm. But then people in my community would be like, no.
I would challenge you and say that is a piece of your ego that is making you question that because
Definitely.
You want to uphold this thing, but is it a drug that's making you not sober or is it a medicine? It's a medicine. It's not a drug. And that's part of why like people doing it recreationally is so detrimental because when you have an experience where you've set an intention and I also open and close sacred space on the day of like, it's a very powerful experience. you don't want to do them again anytime soon.
Yeah,
like you need time to digest what has happened. And when people are just like, oh, I took a cap on Saturday and did this random thing and went to a bar. I'm like, you did mushrooms and went to a bar? Are you crazy?
Yeah.
Like,
you're fucking the whole thing up.
You're why they're illegal. Like everyone would love each other in the world if they weren't illegal and we could just toast everyone.
There would definitely be a shift. There would definitely be a shift in the way that we interface with one another, and the way we interface with ourselves, because that's why we have such a. I hate to generalize. Let me fucking wrap that back, because I hate when I do that. But I think there's a big piece of the issue in the world is that we don't look at we only perceive out of our five senses, and then we have the echo chambers of our social media, and we're not looking at the vastness of our minds and the vastness of the world. And especially with psilocybin, I haven't been able to do any other plant medicine, but with psilocybin, the natural aspect of like being connected with something from the earth that makes you feel as a whole that you are more connected to the earth in general, I think would just help people feel a genuine connection to one another, as opposed to the fallacy of connection via social media. Because via social media, it's like, I can see what you're doing every day in your life, but I don't know anything fucking about you. But with psilocybin, experiences, you can be like, I don't know you personally, but I know you like in
here. I know that we are connected.
Yeah.
Totally.
And
one of the most powerful experiences I had was like one of the first people I ever held space for. His intention that he set was compassion. And I was like, okay, you want to be more compassionate. And I have always been like a very empathic person. So that is just something that has come naturally to me. But for this person, we had experiences together where like very clearly that was not his default at all. And I held space for him and we went through the day and I like worked through some emotions with him. And I don't know how else to explain this other than I watched him realize what love is.
Yeah.
Like it was absolutely wild. He was like, I thought that I loved people before, but now like I love everyone. And I was like, oh my gosh.
I had a similar experience in my ritual that I knew, for me, before, when I got sober, I knew God existed, because in my experience, I wrapped myself in a Native American blanket, right? And was sit in this Native American blanket for hours, like in this meditation. And before, like, so this blanket just started as this blanket, and then it ended as the arms of God around me. And so when being a sober person, it's like, you can't even fucking tell me there's nothing out there, because I've tangibly felt these arms around me, and there's that capability, there's that experience that people are missing out on, and that truth that people are missing out on, because we're only perceiving in our limited spectrum. And I think the work that you're doing with people opens up those possibilities.
Totally. I mean, and every argument or disagreement or like hate, it comes from me versus you, right? Yeah. And so if people can grow into that connectedness by this experience, then how powerful is that? And then there's a connection of, some people lack love for other people, some people lack love for themselves. Is it the same thing? And everyone kind of, but whatever way I get there, if I can set the intention of self-love and achieve that, then I automatically love you better. Or if I feel the connectedness to you, I inherently love myself better, because if I'm not going to harm you, I'm not going to harm myself if we're the same.
Yeah.
The research behind like psychedelic healing and stuff just talks about over and over, like, one session with something like this is like 20 therapy sessions or years, depending on who it is. And it's going to be the norm soon, like
the next 20 years. It's
totally. Like New Mexico, you've been able to grow them and whatever since like 1995. You can't dry them, which whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, like Oakland and Denver are decriminalized. Oakland, I read, has, it's like grow something and give. There's like 3 G's that they abide by, but it's all about like it's from the earth. So just kind of like do whatever you want.
Yeah.
We'll let you do. We won't pay attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's the norm soon, but
Yeah.
it's going to take time to get there because that drug war really messed us up a little bit.
Yeah. It's interesting when it comes to the drug war. It's never been about ending the use of drugs. It's been about mass incarceration because, people do more drugs now than ever.
Totally.
So we would, logically be like, okay, this drug war thing is not working. So it's never been about drugs. I think it's about ending, people using drugs. It's about control, especially with psychedelics. It's like, I forget the direct classification, but they're classified with for no medicinal use federally. They're classified with heroin has medicinal use, but it's classified with cannabis is also there too. But like it's clearly about you do not want people to expand their consciousness. That is dangerous,
right?
And like if the drug war was effective, we would decriminalize drugs, right? And be like, okay, let's end this trade of drugs. Let's completely destroy the market, right? That's the obvious solution to the drug war. But it's never been about that.
It's all about power, right?
Power.
Like if I can make you think that this thing is bad and people that do this thing are bad, you inherently hate them and love anyone who's against them.
Yeah. Yeah, and the idea that our current administration is running off of and so many of the previous administrations have run off of is law and order, that control that people want. But I think the work you're doing and the space you're holding for people is profound.
Thanks.
And on this podcast, I don't want people to think like I'm anti-drug because I totally wish that I can do drugs and just chill. That sounds tight as fuck, right? Like you can probably drink, right? Yeah, I can't even have one drink or I'll the cops will come. You know what I mean? Like I'm that kind of drinker. Like I ruin parties, but like I wish I could, experience this as a sober man. And there is ego in like why I don't do it because it would ruin my standing in the community.
But there's a difference even alcohol, alcohol is not good for you. Alcohol does not do anything positive for your system. It's inflammatory. It's bad for your liver. It's fun to have a couple drinks for some people, but it is not good for you. There's nothing positive that comes out of those experiences from like a chemical perspective, right? But psilocybin is a medicine.
Yeah.
It is
different.
It's different. It's not a drug. It is a medicine. And just because someone labeled it a drug in the 70s so they could win an election doesn't change the fact that it's a medicine.
Yeah. So I appreciate the work you're doing. I know you don't promote this. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah. So I do InHome Retreats. I feel passionately about the effects of psychedelic healing. I'm not creating that for anyone. I do InHome Retreats with psychedelic work via breath work and like body work and sound healing and different things. And if that is something that you choose to do, then we talk about it and I guide you through set and setting and dosage and things like that so that we can optimize the benefits that you're going to have and make it way safer than you doing it by yourself without any of those things.
Got you. So, and just to let everybody know, my partner is a normie. We call people normies.
Normies? Okay.
Yeah, she's a normie. So she's actually going to work with you in the coming months, and I'm very excited.
I'm excited.
I'm excited for her because she's so closed off to that world. But she's one of the more spiritual people naturally, probably one of the most faithfully spiritual people I've ever met.
Yeah.
Actually, I know she is. So I'm excited to see her, to hear about her transcendent experience, or she could not tell me at all. I'm down for you to not tell me at all and just have that be yours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like whatever that turns into for her.
But I am so certain in the effects of this type of work that even if she doesn't speak a word about it to you, your life will change.
I agree.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I want it for everybody.
Me too. Hit me up.
Yeah, I want it for everybody. So plug anything you want to plug.
So my Instagram is @bodyabsolution. BODYAB.
It'll be right there. It'll be on the YouTube.
Oh.
On the YouTube, it'll be right there.
I was like, what?
So
so Instagram handle is Body Absolution. And then my website is just bodyabsolution.com. The idea being that absolution is like freedom from shame and guilt so that you can experience freedom and joy and pleasure.
Yeah.
And a lot of that gets stuck in our body, and that's where we go.
I really support what you're doing. I love what you're doing. Maybe I'll do it secretly. Bitches.
Maybe it'll be great and you'll do it publicly.
I won't tell you guys if I do it. And I don't care if you think whatever. No, I really do care, so don't judge me. All right, we're going to get out of here. Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you for having me.
That was perfect, wasn't it? It was super easy.
It was good. I like
super easy. Thank you.